上界老教师去，老教师去，给的老教师去，老毛老教师。上界老教师去，老教师去，给的老教师去，上界是当作业就能老。上九波的大女教孙些，大给人做结为做能结，罗拉班吉上结这本书，上结是当做结就能老。上车波的到那教孙去，大给人做地位做能的，若来盘子上见这本书。去他之的我当地位就当本就是甚至他之的我当的我姐当着我就是甚至他之的我别的我当门着我就是甚至他们这也让找到你当着为他用了你我就他们这的我当地为就当本就甚至他们这的我当的我姐当着我就是甚至他们这的我别的我当门着我就是甚至他们这也让找到你当着为他用了你我就阿弥陀正如浪日日的讲棒的上界上的没得不瓦因如果那到上了就不说一等个人让那满着那家的要的要
In English, on page number 11, I take refuge in the Guru, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. Now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by the merit created in his practice, may I identify Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyfulness. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground, the mountain with perfume, strong with flowers, mountain encircled by the four mountains, surmounted by the sun and the moon. I visualize this Buddha field and offering. May all living beings enjoy the pure.
真用对，哦呀，哦那说，那长马路咱们这些历史有起了，就这种吧。
Good to see you.
아니 다른 송아서 도즈나지 같이 왔어.
Christian song.
어야 다 곰자인스라 저 로마돈 곰자인스 다 저동안에 같은 거만 마몽오시에서 tin사다 뭔가시 먹고지 그런 뭔가 또 다른 곰자 소 뭔가람이니 다리 돈한테 다른 동기요 받아 다리 소때 마제와 진심능아 이따 정글 저 한번 오고 디바로 텔레섬 마양아 토에나 단디도 티 아니 텔레티니트 마양아 셈나 다리 돈 마지바 치드는 조금 레시 다 티톤티 마양이 돈이 다리 다리 소와세 티 돈도테 니르마 호르모즈니 아니 티 돈도테 하고이나 테 삼노당 토에나 테 조금 레시 어떤이가 만다와 지내는 아주 범정에 다리 그 돈도테 다리 셈니 마질라 다리 동구요 셈니 마질라 티 돈돈 냠테니 다리 그 돈도 삼노다트나 다리 트레스 와세 당보데 로마 냠마 호모세 들어와 롤마세 때 심진 탐진 등을리 롤와 롤이 니와 동담바 아니 니르마세 때 코랑테 아니 같이 때 질라베 셈탄 등을 레도 니와 동테니 티 셰럽 그 손돈 잡고 살았죠 아니 홀모세 때 티질라 샤명지 상습 셈이요 자 아니 내가 강당 가지 신밤에 바이 봤는데 덴디 처음에 딘디 니와 뜻음 좀 처음에 돈 로마라 성교자 어디기 실부터 심지 담치기 길한 지금 나 어떤 담치 매와 작성 삼 어떤 도 행성죠.
Okay, we're going to begin our today's Dharma discussion by practicing the Aryatara meditation. So today, because we have talked about the procedures or the process or the basic characteristics of this form of meditation, the Aryatara meditation. So therefore, I'm not going to elaborate the details and that are required for this practice. So anyway, and I would like to encourage you today, while you are practicing meditation of Aryatara, and your focus, if it's possible, focus on the mantra. That means Om Dari Duri Soha. So your object of meditative observation or meditative absorption is the mantra, okay? The sacred formula, Om Dari Duri Soha. So keep that mantra in your mind. And keep it and be a very actively be a recollective, reflective, and remember that to be mindful about that very mantra, because that's your object of meditation. And while we are practice about the 10 times of the rosary, the mala here, in the 10 times means like 1,000, over 1,000 times, and the mantra recitation. So meanwhile, what I like to encourage you again to do is that if you be able to try your best, if you be able to bring your entire mind intention and not intention, attention, right? And place all your attentions onto the Om Dari Duri Soha, this very mantra, without thinking and distracted. So that very single pointed state of mind itself is called the stability meditation. Shime, Tibetan, and Shamatha in Sanskrit. So yes, so you said Om Dari Dudari Duri Soha. Om Dari, that's the mother of the liberation, and which is referred to that and the Aryan Torah, who is the liberator, who is our spiritual master, guidance, and the protector, and so we're going to rely on her and ask her to free us, free all sentient from the samsara, all kinds of sufferings. So then when you say Om Dari, and think about that. Om Dari Dudari, that means the swift and the goddess of the goddess with a swift or with the promptly or swift or something that super in terms of this the speed is super fast. So you think about Aryan Tara as you kind of mentally and reciting her mentally think of or reflect upon a sacred image in your mind, and then the said mantra, and then the responded the corresponding is being developed. So and then it's the way she responded to your prayer, and is as faster as like it's like the inconceivable speed. She will respond. And then on Dariduri Soha, then last is the goddess of or the Buddha of the courage or braveness. Here, the braveness and courage refer to the Arihara's compassion and the bodhicitta, or the perfections of the perfection of the great perfection of Aryan Tara's bodhicitta, the practice of bodhicitta, and the great perfection of practice in and of the Mahakaruna, or the compassion. So see now through this mantra we know that the Aryan Tara is the mother of the liberation, and the way she was going to her deeds, the deeds in terms of how fast she can save us or help that the beings who call upon her name is the faster is like the moment of the thoughts or inconceivable, and then she can do that, and she is able to do so. That's because she has perfectly developed accomplished the practice of great compassion and the bodhicitta. So think of this and have this in your mind. When you reflecting upon this meaning of the mantra Om Dari Dudari Soha, the form of meditation now you are practicing is called the analytical meditation or vipassana. So anyway, the point is yes, either way, and while you again you just adjust your motivation, the very the reason you engage in such a practice is because you aimed to beseech supply and to the making the supplication to Aryan Tara, and I hope that by her compassion, power, and wisdom, so the all sentient beings and they can free from the all kinds of suffering, especially in the context of our self here on planet Earth. May all beings free from this all kinds of sufferings, particularly the sufferings that are caused by the pandemic.
Page number 64, say prayers. Om
Te ma la mo ru ma la sha yang za ru ma de ri fa mo ta da ra ye je gan se ma de re do na tam je de ma so ye ke je la ra de da re de re so da re de so da re so da re so da re the near the law chandre the journey roa chigam mani wa the sava over show oxygen na pa ni pa ni the na the kar mani wa ta de shwa me ber show manam da tong da ba da sa de jour de por do khamro so bo so ba ni je sen da ta chu on so ta ma khatsan tin ma lo go chi tong da jong di khat de ke 까무즈라 다 지제 고디 마등 이래 이거도 시입니다. 강터를 아주 참하고 다 디낭라 쇼스키네 고 오네 노소 망보즈가 고요 그티나 아니 망보즈 따따따도 시군데 미시다 강터리나다 앞로 공연이 로아드 된다. 마리 빵에 종상 티 코리자와 담바세죠 왔더니 말로긴다. Te ongala dame ki tawa tanlan bab giwi gishangs tanlan bab pitchilna tangbos maripan ripi mantin shoks jirwa yinla teyang ripa li jen samtang ripa samki mepa mantin sho mayin shang ripi ngada mantin shoks jirwa o ripang kang yung rongwa la mashay te dame pitun topi Sherboz. Devina ten dot brodopa in la telana kanzatang chiki dangzin nisos. Tetaki mugil kanzatang chiki tangta brodopi zendangi yilna kanzatang chiki date se otabat lojna.
Right. Okay, now let's continue the text. Please go to your translation, page 111. So we're going to read and try to understand the subject matter presented here. And I must confess that I don't know how well you will be able to apprehend it or be able to comprehend this very difficult topic. I myself, on the other hand, find that this is quite a challenging topic because the subject matter is, or the theme of competition is rather profound. And on top of that, it also involved the various philosophical presentations, which even made the discussions of this difficult subject matter harder. But in any case, let's try our best, okay? Recognizing what ignorance is. Ignorance or a lack of a basic awareness is dynamically opposed to awareness. It is not merely other than awareness, nor is it's the mere negation of awareness. It is the opposing factor that directly contradicts awareness. Its awareness itself should not be understood as just any sort of awareness, but as the discriminating intelligence that cognize the meaning of selflessness. That being the case, ignorance is that which exaggerates phenomena, conceiving of them as being self-existent. This involves persons that of phenomena. The objects of these two are the objects of the mode of exaggeration of projected onto persons and phenomena. That is the self of person and the phenomena.
오들 단디 스시고도 조니 마릭 파세야 돼 인진 간다지 그래서 마릭 파세야 돼 타르트기 소나네 리피먼트 쇼웨스 리피먼트 쇼크 리피먼트 쇼즈 리파세다 간자 넬리 토피 로지가 샘지라 사리크 차지라 리파시고라 어때 넬리 토피 로티기 먼트 쇼네 신실 어떤 준비 리파 샘지라 아니 마릭 파시기 오래 토마토 아니 제똥 마시와 좀 참마 마릭 파지 잠깐 말이 리피 먼트 쇼킹 gadda kirwani teta marik pazin jogore tati marik pa jogorzo tela marik pa jaga yongorzo ti tela ane dagme tombe ton sher lavoz ti nangne la parta ta tamta thamong wilgisna dagme topi sherb ki mantin shogozir so dagtin zimbat chakor dagtin zin se dangal dagtin zimbat 치기 같은 좀 봐도 간섭 같은 좀 많이 이제 장원 다다 진 다다 좀 얼소 진 다다 라 가르치고 간섭 같은 진저도 나 랑진기 다 다다 같은 간섭 좀 도지고 다진 다다 랑진기 더버 요번 좀 봐지라다 다진 세고 된 정글 론독는 그때 나도 샘다 마릭 바가 지조안로 차도 마릭 바 조이지네 디 저지기로다 당진 마릭 바드로도 나지네 좀비 rangin ki dipi nga se te rangin ki dipi nga se te sichila tewa me par te rangin ki dipi nga rong sembi nang na mi chama yongda ka chi yongor rangin ki dipi zamba chi yongor te ne tangton chani songna ni thku mare te sa te ngoni china nga rong sem nang na japa nang ji yo mare se te sa da te shetang te la dangjin kenta dang han han chi zini han chi se te nga rong rangin ki mi chama kiwa 토마님 받는 스지게 삼마고 랑진기가 세sem나 요아지 가르즈는 아티 가르즈는 데르즈네 슈샤키 메니 다지 요르즈가 요즈가 세때 산지리 당진 근덕 세때 nga 세때 간드 요다 요고 요나 간드지 요르즈다 다시다는 호마들이 좀 담으로 자네 아니 다 nga 세때 요르 nga 세때 베 딱바르 스지라 마템 바랑 와제니 캐치 섬든지 다세 어 데르지 셰바데 근덕 세고 근다바 소소 삼문낭데 드르지게 레진다 셈비 로탕을 셈비당나 로탕로 첸니 점티타 점타가 로탕바로 로탕 아니 드비탈라테니 그런 거 잔데 근다스고 땡이 가능한데 땡 원이지나 점티 로탕비 다다 다치랑지 다다 요말 칸라 요티 요데 dakpaim bachi ketjanchila te magoim barang watin de yo marda tinzi zanen ni to marda ta rangcha waseda 한치 기다데 잔이 손한테 요 말했어요. 랑진기를 봐 요 말했어요. 마땅 마시 병원라 때닌 종화점도 봉봉아 초비 초숨기 땅데 자용 거래. 단 노르디나 고주 때고 트고 정도.
So obviously the most difficult thing for us to successfully achieve what to do, accomplish is to understand what is the awareness. So in other words, how we define the awareness and how we perceiving the awareness and then implementing that very awareness. Awareness in this sense is the wisdom which understands the ultimate nature of reality. But before awareness, then we have to understand what is the thing which is opposed from this awareness. Right? That is the ignorance. Ignorance, generally speaking, is like the text says here, is a dynamically opposed to awareness. Okay? which is a kind of a mind or the a mental phenomena. And you can say it's a perception or is a form of view or the belief or the understanding, right? A perception. So that perception or understanding, view, or belief, or recognition, whatever you call it, and it's doing something. Okay, it play a particular role. That role is dynamically opposed to the awareness. Okay, now let's back to awareness. What is awareness? Awareness basically is wisdom. Okay? And then what is wisdom? Wisdom is the cognitive and illuminate aspects of the mind. So we have a mind, right? Our mind, right? The nature of our mind, which is cognitive and illuminates, or illumination and cognitive. Being cognitive and illumination. So that is that we can characterize the wisdom in such a way. We can consider this is the wisdom. So now, what the ignorance does is opposite from that. Okay? Which, say, if you would say the combination, illumination, or ignorance, how the ignorance affect us, particularly in terms of our spiritual realization, the enlightenment, right? So we want to attain the enlightenment. However, and there's something it seriously played the role of blocking us, okay, prevent us from that very achievement, or that very state of so what prevent us? What place play the role of obstacle, right, block us and kept us away from the state of enlightenment? That is the ignorance. Then specifically, what kind of ignorance then? So specifically, there are two forms of ignorance. Right? Two forms of ignorance. One form of ignorance is the exaggeration of the self, the true nature or the states and status of the individuality, or self-identity. So that's a form of ignorance. Mistaken perception or the perception of the self-person is the first form of ignorance, which is the form of the first form of you can say it's obstacle, setback, or the problem which prevents us, blocks us from the enlightenment. Okay? So this exaggerated status of self, or the state of self, typically is the view, is the way, or is the understanding, is a kind of a form of outlook. Okay, outlook in terms of yourself, your individuality, your identity as a person. So who are you? What are you? And how? What really do you mean by I in this context? So the way, the ignorance of self of a person, or grasping the self of a person, right, misperception of self of a person, what that does is it consider the self, okay, each individually, like us. We consider ourselves, our individuality, our self-identity as being a self-existent, self-sufficient, okay, and independent. Of course, which is absolutely not the case at all, which is so the way we're perceiving ourselves this way, which is the opposite of the awareness, which is completely wrong. Okay. So then this form of so this is the first form of ignorance, and the second form of ignorance, and which is also a form of ignorance we call the innate grasping of a self person, which is here as the self of phenomena. Okay? So in other words, it is the exaggeration, right? The mode of exaggeration. So in your mind, you have kind of, you projected it, right? You project some kind of objects, and you hold on to that objects, and you think that that mode of that very object is the true, is something is true, and that the mode of exaggeration that you project in your mind up onto any phenomena other than the individuality or self-identity. So, and if other phenomena and ignorance or self, the misperception of self. This form of misperception of self or ignorance of self, self of a person, which we call the innate grasp. So there are two forms of ignorances that have been debated, right, throughout the history, or elaborated, argued, right, and presented by all kinds of different schools of philosophies. And all the schools of philosophy within the Buddhism, right? Although in some level, we do have some kind of disagreement with respect to the subtlety, the subtle aspect of the self of the person. But we do, all the Buddhist schools do believe that the selflessness, self of person is grasping as self phenomena. In other words, so the belief, the form of the self-existing, self-existing, or operating under its own power, which is not true, which is of exaggeration, right? Is projection. Is that you are superimpose something up onto that very phenomena. So that's the second form of the ignorance of ignorance. And in this case, as we mentioned, it's called the innate grasping self of phenomena. So, and in Buddhism, we particularly, of course, they talk about the I, the self, and the person, right? Is the synonym. We consider you may be talking that's the self, and you are talking about a person. So those are synonyms. And unlike the other school of non-Buddhist schools of philosophy, and so Buddhism are all the Buddhist schools clearly reject the form of self or the Atma. Atma, a self of person, characterized by or marked by the four unique qualities, such as permanent or eternal, right? And blissful, and the pure or clean, being clean or being pure, and being self-sufficient. So this means that other than Buddhist schools of philosophy, when they talk about the self or the person or the I, and they basically promote asserting to believe that there is a self, an ultimate self. That self is has endured with the four qualities. So that self is
Recently.
okay. Blissful, and the enlightened, and the self-sufficient. All Buddhist school is rejected the existence of that form of the self. It's not Buddhism believe that there's no such a self under any circumstances other than a mental projection or the superimposed phenomena. So there's no such a thing. So the idea is that self is not existed because that form of self of the other non-Buddhist schools believe either with respect with regarding to the ultimate nature of a person or ultimate nature of phenomena. If it does exist, it should be existed inherently. But when you bring that very mode of inherently existent self, right, and put it under the light of the analytical, critical analytical analysis, you will find that that I is immediately is unbearable, right? Cannot resist, cannot reject that critical analysis, meaning cannot hold its own position or be vanished. Right? Circumstances, and the inner circumstances does not exist at all, right? So when we look and turn our attention, right, and in our mind, and so when you feel, right, when you think about or claim the self-identity, yourself internally as an I, we then sort of pause and reflect upon that very shed a light of awareness onto that very I, right? The whatever the whichever the way you claim or you identify, and when you examine that very status or the positions of that very self, which you just claimed I, you will see, right? Either it does exist inherently or does not exist inherently at all. Of course, the very conclusion that a Buddhist philosophy drawn and is that the result of your exam, your critical analysis of your self identity or whatever you claim the world where you are, right? Internally, when you reflect that very mode of your state of being, yourself, you as a person, and it's only proof that it does not inherently exist, right? And so, since the Buddhism rejected that the ultimate nature of ultimate status of a person, and is free from or is devoid of those four marks of the non-Buddhist schools of philosophy's claim. So therefore, as a Buddhist practitioner, what we need to deal with is we need to deal with the problems created by the misperception of self. That is, the self is inherently, you as person is inherently existent. Once you finish this task of the status of true status of self, they need to deal with the second form of the self, that is the self or the true status of the phenomena, right? And so true status of the phenomena, and which again they involve with like we talked about the image, the most difficult, challenging form of the grasping self of phenomena is which is the unit. So it's kind of developed by its own, right? But it's mistaken. Right? It is not some kind of philosophically sort of elaborated or established the phenomena, but rather is a kind of it does not involve with the form of education or philosophical system in school, but it's just sort of there. So our task is to analyze, right? Follow the Buddhist school's philosophy, right? And follow the correct view, and develop the wisdom in our mind, and then so our mind can gain a certainty. So, for a strong sense of certainty, and that certainty is can help us cut off all the wrong views and doubts, right? So whereby we can live with the wisdom. So that's the essence of essence of our Buddhist practice, and so we needed to from time to time to analytically and aware of the misperception of self, the differences between the misperception of self and the wisdom and truly understand the status of the individuality of the individuality as a person and an individual of the phenomena. And we must to draw the conclusion at the end of all the studies and the examinations that we are the person, right? We are we've been so named after the aggregates, okay? We are the we are as person is the result of establishment of the 5 aggregates.
어떻더니 마 연바도 거 그런 안드네리 고문도 대응 다음에 달라 바라 그자 캡치와던 캡충와 던데비 설 선바나 매 머롱디 양락데스 그자 캡치나 요바던 덴버 요바 찍듯데니 저 디땅데 덴버 고파 케상 고피 남적 되지나 덴 데율 카피 리스트 셰피 세 요바 체름 좀 시와 마시위 끈니 뇽와 남송기 땐 탐질 투빙 퉁오 마시기 남적도 시정 대다 참이 드바 랑리 좀 시와 딱네 디슴성기 탐지진 로아식빌랑 지타와 딱지기 타땅자와 딸람베비 돈 곰버 냠슬렌 비치 탑동 셰르 야만데 브존직도 곰비 제우 네급도 치즈기 끄니 건석기 건석식기 특질라 오치라 도파 타타비 치기 예비 코르와 찌슬 마동비 바르다 생긴드비 현접 임차비 자비고니 심진기 돈실 슬소 질름기 데오 남적남 치트월기로고스 어떻게 jordan da vart.
It's 11 o'clock.
In addition, the most vital factor in determining selflessness is to ascertain the existence so that neither too little nor too much is negated. If the object of negation is too extensive, existence and the true existence will be mingled together as one. And since we accept that the mental projection, true existence is what is to be negated, when according to the system of refuting true existence, we perform the actual negation. We will not know how validly to establish existence. Instead, we will present everything such as the defiled and pure aspects of dependent arising in a distorted way.
차송해.
In meditation on the established meaning of the view free of the two extremes, the basis of the path traversed by the awakened ones of the three times, they will be gravely confused in their presentations of the entirety of the ground, paths, and fruits. For at the resultant point of meditation on the method, when the true body and the form, when the truth body and the form body are actualized in one person's mind stream, in one nature, yet distinct, he or she will act to benefit sentient being spontaneously and unremittently until cyclic existence has been emptied.
단디 가르사고드나 당부 거저 캡치와서 때 셔도 요바당 덴드니 찍드 좀바이나 코르치 덴드 삼당고로 요다 덴버 요나 덴버 요고레스 덴버 메나 메고레스 때 삼당고서 아니 춘도고레스 때 트위 돕기 아니 단 메르즈도 베데 덴버 요 마레즈 수다 단에 메발고 노고 근데 메발고 소나 단일 트위 한 거다는 아주 산이 조비 단일 그 제도 봉보조도 참만 가노 그래. 대변은 상지가 지금 루파니 정화를 때니 그니지 탑동 셔럽니 냠슬렘발라 때니 그니 공방토는 엔나 ዝቅ등 치근이 그 토버지 림리게 남정 대형 매와 찬도 그래. 딱 가정 맞지 좋은 것들 나오. 어떠니 제조 말이지. 매파라 요파당 덴버 요파니 차퍼치니 덴버 요요 말이 가서 나와나 가서 덴버 섬 덴버 다가서 덴버 요 말이 요레지. 요리 요통때 간르즈나 아니 때닌 종화 잠지 딱비 딱점지 요레지. 어떻든 조시고래 뜬조 마시와이나 덴버 요나 요 덴버 요고래 정다 단이 탐지. 그래서 때네 덴버 요 말에서도 매발을 친다고 매발 치소나 아니 딱비 탈로 통로 그렇지. 요나 덴버 요거즈니 요버 좀바이나 땅빛 tala hongdu gure me dember yo marzna me pala nginji sona chapi thala hongdu chal takshi ki thani tang trewi wela ni gore wela ni gore ta dember yo mari thani jamdu yore ni tamil tani me pa mari thani jamdu yore ta kilinchi de gore ta shegu ta don roji dina tin shegu ta kya they don't understand
Okay, now we hit the actual rock and into the water. So here, let's see what we need to deal with here. So essentially, what we need to deal with here is about the how to determining the selflessness. Okay, that's the ultimate reality, right? Ultimate reality with respect to, regarding to the nature of a self person and then the nature of phenomena. So we must be aware of, must be always very careful the way how we asserting, how the way we establish it, and the correct, the pure view, and truly understand the true status of the selflessness, either regarding the nature of a person, or ultimate nature of person, or the ultimate nature of phenomena. So here we need to deal with the negation, the object negation, right? The extent of the object negation. So the extent of the object negation is something. If you make this extent of the object of the negation, right? If the two loose, or like text says, if it's too little, you negate it too little. You're not supposed to negate too little nor too much, because either way, if you negate it too little, it won't serve you to reach help you to achieve your ultimate goal, right, of enlightenment. But if you negate it too much, it also wouldn't help you to expand develop the perfect view, then whereby it attend the enlightenment itself. So therefore, the object of negation, if it's too extensive, if it's too loose or too much, right? For instance, like there are a lot of people, right? A lot actually the philosophical the arenas, the arenas of philosophical debate, right? From ancient time to today, people often and all the philosophers often make a huge mistake, and the mistake they make is that they fail to differentiate or distinguish between the phenomena that is existent, like existential, right? Something that's substantial, existential, and which is not inherently existent. Okay. So they think if anything that existed or does existed, then has to be inherently existed. If anything that does not exist, then I think is not exist at all, or in whatever in any form, it does not exist. So because they fail to make such a distinction between the existence and the truly or a real existence and or a inherent existence. So therefore, if they say phenomenon is existed and it is truly existed, inherently existed, then they can't. This means that they fail to understand the reach what they would call the perfect in the point of negation. Why? Because they say it existed. Anything that includes the self and a phenomena existed and inherently existed. So the end is really didn't address the root cause of the cause of the problem, right? In contrast, other philosophers, and they mistakenly think if you claim phenomena of the ultimate nature of self of person or ultimate nature of phenomena, it does not exist, then they think that it does not exist in any way or in is totally non-exist at all. Okay? It's too little. Okay? The negation, the extent of the negation is too. I'm sorry, it's too much. Right? It's too much because if you say it does not exist at all, right? Nothing exists. Then what happened is, so you also have to negate, reject the existence of Buddha's two truths, the Buddha's two bodies, or the Buddhahood itself, the existence of Buddhahood, the enlightenment, right? The states of enlightenment. You know, the Buddha is the enlightened one, awakened one, who possesses the two forms of body, the truth body and the form body. And the truth body and the form body is in result, right? Or Buddha achieved as a result of his abandonment or successful eradication of the two obstacles and the two obscurations, the obscurations of afflictive emotion and the obscuration to the knowledge. Okay, so Buddha successfully through the practice be able to eliminate the obscurations of defilements, disturbing emotions, right? And also successfully be able to eliminate, abandon the obscuration to the knowledge. So therefore, Buddha attained become enlightened one and possessing the two bodies, right? The form body and the truth body. So if we follow those who claim that phenomena does not exist in any term at all, then you got to reject the existence of Buddhahood, right? And then you can believe system of karma, the cause and effect working. Why? Because there's nothing really going on, right? So as a Buddhist practitioner, we must try to see that this very subtle and the distinctions, right? And make sure when we say a phenomenon or self does not exist, we must know that what do we mean by self or I, identity, individuality, does not exist. What do we mean is that it does not exist inherently. We're not rejected kind of blindly or unconditionally. We rejected it under the that the specific context is that in our general kind of the mind or the way we feel we the inherently existed. That form of the self-existent or inherently existent self does not exist at all. So we need to reject that self. But at the same time, our experience, the common sense also tells that we do have individuality, we do have this sense of existence, and we have the empirically, we know, right, the things are going on, and we're conscious the things and the events, we know the things. But this sense of self, right, the sense of individuality, I, a person, is a conventional self. It's not an absolute at all, but it is a conventional. It is an imputed, right? Or is a designated phenomena. Is an established based upon the cause and the conditions. In other words, in the most subtle, what is the philosophical language, it's called a dependent arising, right? Or pratica samudvada. The interconnectedness and dependent or dependent origination, and so that conventional self is functioning, is working, it does exist, right? And your experience and your mind, your conscious knows all these things, but that is just at the kind of mere appearance level, right? Is at the empirical level, it is the case, but it doesn't mean that the very self or appearance or absolutely existed phenomena. It's not, okay? So when you be able to establish the self or this identity, your individuality or identity as a designated entity, right? And then that means you have the reason, and now you can appreciate it, and you see the beauty of dependent arising, and then you have the reason to respect the law of cause effect, right? And you are able to free yourself from the extremes of the nihilism, right? So this means that if you fail to establish or clearly recognize the self as a designated entity, but if you think that the self is absolute, independent, self-existent, then we will fail to another extreme, the opposite extreme, that extreme of eternalism. So the point is that when we say existed, Buddhism doesn't believe things are events, like a cause effect, the two forms of Buddha and or the state of enlightenment. All this does existed. But when you heard Buddhism say it existed, is there, and but you have to know that Buddhism does not suggest that it is inherently existed phenomena at all. Okay? So therefore, you must know, just like when we say nothing, it does not exist. You know, so Buddhism says it does not exist. When they say does not exist, it means it does not exist inherently. Similarly, when Buddhism say is past existed, you also must know when we say does exist, it doesn't mean that a very existence is inherently existent or truly existent. Okay. Yes, the bottom line is that you rejected the inherently existent self, either is the individual, as with respect to the truth nature of the self or the phenomenon, right? In both cases, your research, your examination, and your practice at the end has to reach the point where you see both self of a person and the self of phenomena. From a absolute point of view, it does not exist at all. But from the conventional point of view, yes, there are, right? Because you can designate it, right? And you can point out the things, events. So which means that even though the phenomena and the individual self or person does not absolutely exist or inherently exist, but it existed as a mere term or as a nominal phenomena. Or in other words, conventionally, it does exist conventionally. Yeah.
다 좋아요. 대랑 이 양수도 두도 무슨 진짜 진짜 요마가.
Oh,
저거 되면 되겠어.
so we have our Geshe Jiaozu today in Seawell, so therefore we don't have the afternoon class. And then, do you have any questions?
So the text has it in the very end.
Okay. Good. Okay. Yeah.
So the text has some of this in the very end, but is it because it's like you're working up because it's so difficult, or is it because it's some of the most important? If I'm reading the text.
Would you please read do you have the copy, and would you please read the things you are referring to?
No, just in the text itself, this last chapter that we're on is like really difficult. Is that why you put it at the very end, or is it because it's very, very important?
Okay, I understand. Okay. 다른데 다른 이 준비 배전데 말 요거는 깔 도착도 때 중심 가리 많이 보는다 배쪽이 유라네
당번 자꾸 있는 상황 되는 거라네. 당번 뒤에 말산도 전에네 저 살아서 딴 거 얼마 더 당번 리센도 장게 고바야 야소나네 그래 저 고쳐 작거로 된 당번이 저거 저는 이만다 sama 되는 거 되게 이너스 딜랜드다 제타 지나 말 일단 로름로 지나 다와 코시고라 다와 코스가 깔리 코시로
I guess we can't blame on the author saying that he played the tricks, okay? And he played tricks on us. Because obviously, if this topic was put in the very front, in the first chapter, and at the very beginning of this discussion, I'm sure that no one will be in this temple now today, because everybody will be running away. It's so they will scare everybody to death. But it put in toward the end of the textbook, as I guess it's a very clever way to hold us, okay, and keep us engaged. Of course, I'm kidding.
그래 적당지나
Normally,
송송.
Normally, what happens is that in the Buddhist the way the Buddhist teaches the individual, the students and practitioners to develop their view and then assist them to practice is first of all they will teach them the skillful means of right. There's something that's common, something is general, and more or less is more like about the moral and the ethical and aspect of the practice. And then later on, and so we develop a clear sense of sound moral, ethical and views, and even the practice itself, and then which means that prepared yourself well mentally, then it will teach the very deep the subject such as emptiness and here.
kirtang jinani tawa kurdupe kali khago yorisira ta nili chal dogora chal tagdun chani sonde ko rabdun jogo ta nangba sangji tumta ji khorongzu samchu de kiwa chimbo tenri de samchu mangbo yoren pena ta ngarang ro ju chomba nangi ta mangbo ji jangi kachari tin labar tumta chamate nga tangbo yin nga pe chuni tawa shang so semtam tawa de ngarang onde tang semtang ni pe jaje da ta de shiro ton ta mindu ta semgu tang ni ta sani mepata mar 메파도 촌이 저시고 말 오마위 르기에 메파 장을 수다 딴니 메파도 마동이 차리 고요 말에 덴버 메나타 딴니 메파 창도 그 요 고요레 요다 요르요 땅다 섬다 비정나 샘기고니 파트바 잠다 파쇼 닐고니다 메는다 저도자는 메뉴 바다 샘부 땅는데 요르다 샘드 저와드 샘드 가와요레 저와드 땅으로 저게 다티 자마시아로 강아지기다 럽땅도 간다 덴버 땅서 마시오 데 진행아 경물음시 아무르바티는 경황신 나서 고물로 그 단다 간서 자시득 자와시럽 그때니 레오 접지 등 이sab지데 그정 묵스기 최송 철리 디고한지 혼나 정서 디카드 들었다 그정 때닌 종화 점지 된종 점도 저거를 때내당아 올레 다 자니 메파이나 덴버메나 자니 메다고 보면 도와 때닌 종화 도와서면 적당로 셈보 셈나 코르송스 데자데 그 리로 안로 춤바이나 저미 경험을 버스거는 주는 리로 있다 안로즈나 티 닐릭고라 하정 깔 카포스타 정소 다다에나 다네 요거도 고고요 말다 저 시에도
Yeah. Well, I feel your pain, or any one of you here, we find this very confusing, and it seems doesn't make so no kind of everything's pretty much sort of messed up or blended, and I share your pain, and I definitely know how you feel. That is because after all, when you come into the Buddhist world of philosophical and presentation of the view with respect regarding to the true nature of status of self and true nature of the phenomena, and therefore, traditionally there are four Buddhist schools, right? All the philosophers and the masters who promoting, right, followed those four different school philosophies. They are great scholars. They are very highly accomplished philosopher, and they are great, highly dedicated practitioners. Yet, when they come into the point of true self-individuality, and then the argument immediately taking place. They just having a hard time to agree with each other, right? And they debated throughout the history, and the form of debate is still going on. So therefore, you don't need to worry about it. Worry about it. And why it's so hard. It's not just you, we here in the temple. In fact, throughout the history, this topic has been troublesome for all the Buddhist practitioners, and particularly including those eminent philosophers and great knowledgeable practitioners who follow each the individual four schools of Buddhist philosophies and respectively. Okay. This idea of no self and of a person, no self of a phenomenon, and which at the beginning was it has been troubled me so much because I just can't differentiate the make a distinctions between the not existent and not exist at all. For me, is so when you say not existent, and it seems that it means that it does not exist at all, right? I had this very difficult time, and particularly the Madhyamika, philosophical view in terms of and the selflessness of a person. I just find it so hard and to understand it. I personally believe that if you ask me what you preferred within the four Buddhist system of philosophical presentations, and which one you prefer, personally, I would say the Chittamatra or the mind-only school, the Yogacara school. Why it is so is because Yogacara's the ultimate view basically say that even though phenomena does not exist externally, or whatever you see externally out there is illusionary, it is a false, is a mistaken, is the illusion. However, and phenomena it does exist mentally or generated from mind. In other words, so the world out there, right, is the projection of the mind. It projects from our own individual consciousness. So from the consciousness and all those phenomena to be revealed or sort of manifested externally out there. I find that so put it as the very source, right? And to say the mind is the only phenomena is truly existed or real existed, right? And then seems to make a sense. So that's why I prefer that. I find that the Chittamatra, the mind only school, Kara, and it's the idea is that make much more sense, right? However, up until the many years ago, I attended His Holiness Dalai Lama's teaching in Amaravati in South India, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama taught, given the commenting on the Nagarjuna's the Madhyamika Mula Karika, the rooted text of the middle way view, philosophical view. Especially when we talk about chapter 26 and 28, and where His Holiness say, he helped me to be able to get some kind of a glimpse, okay, a sense of sort of a moment of a fresh moment that helped me to see the point when he says that when you say that phenomena and does existed, you must know it existed because it dependently arising, dependently being developed. It depends upon as a result of something else. It's conditioned, right? And it's arrived because of the others. The things are involved, but not singly or by itself, and but rather is dependently. And because it dependently arises, and because it is involved the very existence of everything, so therefore it does not own or possess any unchangeable, eternal, and true inherent existence self at all. So up until here, what His whole list saying that to develop a sense of appreciation of Madhyamika's view of selflessness of a person, right? Because the problem is, even though I personally find that, yes, so to me, that from the mind, then everything is out there makes sense. To say that things, events out there, their status, the qualities, and the natures, everything's so it's determined by all my mind. Is even though it makes sense to me, right? I believe this Chittamatra views kind of make a great deal of sense. However, when I challenged myself with the Madhyamika's philosophical view of non-inherently existent self, then I applied that very critical philosophical view to the mind itself. Then ask, mind is real existent, right? Only thing which is the real exist and true and inherently existent. And then how the mind can exist by itself, right? Or operating under its own self, its own power. So then I find that Chittamatra or the mind-only schools of philosophy with respect of the mind is the truly existed or inherently existed, the philosophical view of the presentation began to shaking, and I find it's questionable. And instead, I find that even though I'm not truly understand the Madhyamika's the profundity of the Madhyamika's view with respect of the selfness of a person and selfness of a phenomena, but I do appreciate the idea or the philosophical understanding about the dependent arising. So the bottom line is so the thing when existed, it doesn't have to be thoroughly, absolutely non-existent. Okay? And so that's because I believe that this idea of not existent doesn't mean it's not exist at all. So then I began to feel that it makes sense, and it's somehow it tells us something is very profound and very interesting. And I don't know, this is my own personal experience of the learning experience of Madhyamika philosophy. And I guess those of you out there, you being exposed to this kind of Madhyamika idea, Madhyamika philosophical presentation in one of your previous lifetime. And and your the predisposition or you have a sort of a form or sense of disposition on this particular philosophical view and established or promoted taught by the Madhyamika, maybe, and for you will be easier. The Madhyamika philosophical view of selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena.
Oh yeah, that the budget science, right?
So,
Thank you, Geshe Kunga, Tempa, and Tenzin. If you would like to make a donation for this teaching, it would be greatly appreciated by the monastery and the monks, and also donating for our translator, Tenzin. You can do this by calling 812-336-6807 or by emailing the center at tmbcc.kcl@gmail.com. For those of you here in the temple, I'll pass around the begging bowl, and you may make a donation in that. If not, you may just say a prayer or a mantra into the bowl. And as stated earlier, there will not be a 12 o'clock teaching. All right, thank you.
Page number 80.
让的边边从你康特让我刚去送帮罗门马的给龙着我南着亚维王波当日去。te ma son be te ro kan de yang yang be yang ji te we ji zong de be ren ba gong zong lam ji shou ye ne de be ja na ni shi shou rang ye zhe zhen do be lang ye nan shi zhang zi wei zhang wei tang gui ye 若为业界门宝色是内，要为当宝有让人儿就当宝人成就给马就。cha chang nyam bar jer vi so den jie chen bo yo ro zhou ba yi pan de de sa ver shi bar shou 世界要为马上真理拉着上求浪迹热别讲谈多难解中间去让这别的人这西想，高见是是么当么们跟，在这干的要为我把意，难道难道这味马劲儿去？刚才他把手拿起就人着那总把的一子，得的南极到的周西上。朝夕将左手跟下边这阿妈人梦切大罗年个儿把米当去那个真全部过你寄送的，可送推荐你这咋的说。我是中人不是马街把那几只就见我娘把没本样，光你光的陪我说，光着让为过为上根的，俺当的我妈里中为你下日子往等着讲作业。下辈身体把的单件儿去，我这的钱包当，的上不的样的人的得到跟阶级是道路上，给我的到他们自然的我的什么小辈要我他们自己。 我刚浪说的我把的，到人给为早晚的更加，让我就是让的我儿子般的用的担保的上级，但这业务他们只更更让，一直更老的这了用为呢。担保道德一人者，才有更的叫我中高位。当作新年我是这边的，要为我被南上的年的，感觉怎样都不儿忙儿就。